We had a protest in my city yesterday or the day before, and the police shut down all public transport going into the city. They put up vehicle checkpoints everywhere to make sure no one could go into the city. Like our major market was shut down because of the measures. They just locked everyone straight up out of the city. Um, then we had a small gathering in a suburban area, and cops just went nuts just with pepper spray. There were 2,000 fucking police. There was like more police than protesters. And if you get arrested, you get like a $5,500 fine just for attending. We've also got a curfew and we can't go more than 5 kilometers from our house. It's fucking crazy. Furthermore, if you say you support the protests on like social media, man, you get so many people you thought were chill get so fucking angry at you. I would even call it a divide. Like, if you say that you support the freedom rallies and the freedom protests, people will just unfriend you and socially distance themselves from you. It's fucking gross. Yeah, it's really not going very well over here in terms of losing our freedoms. I think they say that Melbourne has the world record now for the most locked down city in the world, like the highest number of consecutive days of lockdown. And like I said, like 9 p.m. curfew, people are afraid to see their friends if their friends live more than 5 kilometers away. It's just insane. And the levels of the fines they're handing out, like $5,500 fine just for being 6 kilometers away from your house. You know, we've got cops like doing, if you are quote unquote close contact to anyone who's had coronavirus, you have to self-isolate in your house for 2 weeks, maybe even longer, and the cops come knocking on your door and to check that you're home. It's just fucking insane. The whole 5K rule, I think, is designed to stop people's ability to protest. Also, you got a QR code everywhere you go. You got a QR code if you want a coffee at 7-Eleven. You got a QR code if you want to go buy some milk from the supermarket. It's fucking ridiculous.
During the COVID crisis, many countries were comparable to China, a nation notorious for censorship and human rights abuse. Australia was so asinine that they even let babies die due to travel restrictions. 4 babies required a special heart surgery, and the nearest hospital that performed that particular surgery was in another state. And because of COVID, nobody was allowed to cross state lines, so they died. Growing up in any of the developed democracies, we were certainly taught a fundamental feature of democracy that is not really true. That it comes from the people, a government for the people and by the people. But direct democracy doesn't exist at the scale of countries, nor does communism, which entails the absence of social classes. When you hear the word communism, countries such as China and Russia probably come to mind. The Corruption Perceptions Index, run by a global organization with seemingly good intentions, happens to rank Western-aligned developed nations as the least corrupt on the long list of countries. Is it accurate? The COVID tyranny revealed many true colors, and some of the supposedly least communist countries behaved very much like communist states, under the justification of the common good. During the Cold War, in 1968, this political art, created by a man whose name I won't attempt to pronounce, was featured on the cover of Opus magazine. 2 rival nations are depicted as mirror images in the form of a classic comic book hero. During the pandemic, the socialist-style countries at least did not inoculate their entire population with the new mRNA technology. China created a more tried-and-true method of inactivated virus, and Cuba developed their own protein subunit vaccine. And even Harvard boasted about them, reporting, Cuba's COVID vaccine success could serve as a global model. Yet, the vaccine mandates among many institutions required that it must be RNA. Why? If it was so important for everyone to get vaccinated, then why does it have to be RNA? Surely, one of the reasons for vaccine hesitancy is that it's a new type of vaccine, and regardless of whether it's more effective or not, isn't getting any type of COVID vaccine better than nothing? The establishment cannot make any compromises because it has contradicting interest. Why did it take Novavax so long to get approved in the US? Novavax is a protein-based vaccine, not an RNA one, and according to mainstream reports, its efficacy was about 90%. By the time you could get it, many people had already either lost their jobs or gotten jabbed with Pfizer or Moderna. Many are concerned about the vaccine being genetic, but when I say RNA, I'm technically not even talking about RNA, because the RNA in the genetic vaccines are not exactly the same as the RNA found in nature. It contains pseudouridine instead of regular uridine, and it has been suggested by scientists that this pseudouridine helps it evade detection from the innate immune system. Even though actual viruses and viral vector vaccines also contain genetic information, these newer mRNA vaccines might come with even more additional problems. There's lots of debate about whether or not the spike itself from the virus is more or less damaging than the spike produced from the vaccine. The RNA is encased in lipid nanoparticles, and those have been shown to be inflammatory and damaging, even by themselves. Furthermore, it stabilizes it. The genetic material inside the shots is unnaturally stable. That's why it's been shown to persist. Today, I'll be talking specifically about the ever-increasing exploitation of nature, something which many societies have regarded as sacred. What Marx says here is still true. People today have addiction to the various products of the modern world. Through certain consumer choices, we grant the bourgeoisie the right to destroy nature. Like buying snacks which come in a plastic container, and then every individual piece is wrapped in plastic. Or taking certain countermeasures. And it seems every time you enter a museum in Japan, they start talking about SDG stuff. Admittedly, I am also addicted to the vast variety of products and experiences that the modern world has to offer.
What would we do without these beautiful $20 sea unicorn wall hangers? How could we have ever survived without these $35 heart
Hell,
rings?
I want to try various cocktails around the world. And even sometimes, I just buy stuff because it's kawaii. Although it may be tempting to just shut up and take it for convenience, security, and etc. Bear in mind, every advancement of technology allows for a deeper level of commodification, even of what was already commodified. For example, our own physical selves. If your information was leaked, then you may become genetically discriminated against. And they certainly have a motive. After all, data is the new gold. But hey, with that said, I'm not criticizing people for utilizing genetic testing. After all, knowing your DNA really can help you make personalized health choices. And without that data, it can be tricky to know exactly what you should do. For example, certain variants of the MTHFR gene, also known as the motherfucker gene, could require you to need more folate and vitamin B12. Carriers of the APOE4 allele are at a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's, and those individuals may need to take additional precautions. The point is, your unique genetic makeup can impact how you respond to different medications and to different foods. When choosing a company or seeking to learn about your own genetic data, remember, your code is one of the most private of all properties. Iceland holds genetic information on all its citizens. In 2018, a serial killer was caught using DNA previously submitted from someone he was related to. Now, I don't find it very comforting that a family member could ruin my criminal career. And even though this was a good thing, it still goes to show that governmental forces can be granted access to these databases. But now, let's zoom out to talk about the type of property which tends to first pop into mind whenever one hears the word property. Okay, here on this island, I have seen these two words the most. I've seen this like the most out of any other words. I mean, every fucking where. The property that we own is owned in an organized system. If you go hunting, even on your own land, you need a license. But it wasn't always that way. A few states have limits on rainwater and dictate what you're allowed to do with it. If your grass grows too long or a part of your house was falling off, you can be cited for code violations. And eminent domain, which refers to the power of the government to take private property and convert it to public use. In fact, in recent years, the Japanese government forced a bunch of old people to move somewhere else to make way for construction for the upcoming Olympics. And then there's property tax, which is basically paying money indefinitely for permission to continue owning what you already bought and paid for. Rent, essentially. Now, let's talk about farmland. In 1995, Terminator technology developed. Seeds which are genetically modified to disable their own reuse. India is particularly hit hard by GMO monopoly, causing distress and high suicide rates of farmers in a cycle of debt, while Monsanto collects royalties on patented seeds. In 1998, the World Bank's structural adjustment policies forced India to open up its seed sector to global corporations like Cargill, Monsanto, and Syngenta. So I think it begs the question. If a man takes something created by nature over the course of millions or billions of years and makes a small modification, does that give him the right to claim it as intellectual property? So far, I've talked about the past and the present, but how about the future? Where are we heading? We've already had moderate success in sending information to the brain. Someday, we might be able to hook our brains up to the internet or communicate telepathically. Which begs the question, will we see the transition of free will to commodified will? Of course, they would use safety as a justification, as they always do. They might say, for example, we monitor thoughts to find out who's a pedophile, or to help people stop illegal drugs by charging them money for considering too much about it. It may sound ridiculous. However, it is characteristic of governments to use salami tactics to gradually change things, regardless of the ideological narrative presented publicly. So don't exploit yourself themselves. I'm going to end this on a positive note. In 2009, lobbyists in Brazil almost succeeded in legalizing Terminator seeds. But in the end, they weren't able to do it. And in 2015, Kuwait made DNA testing mandatory for all citizens, becoming the first country to do so. And refusing could get you fined up to $33,000 and jail time up to 7 years. But in 2017, the law was abolished from public backlash.